Eerie discovery under the floor. An ordinary day for Amelia turned into a real investigation. She noticed that one of the floorboards in her house was loose and decided to lift it to find out the reason. However, instead of a simple breakage, strange objects were found under the board. An old coin from 1904 and a small golden book. Opening the book, she discovered that the pages were unusually thick. Inside were old photographs, creepy images of the house, dark shadows in empty rooms, and mysterious portraits. Perhaps the house holds dark secrets of the past, or maybe the photographs have simply aged. However, Amelia herself was seriously scared by the discovery. She admitted that since then she has felt anxious and wants to know what other secrets her house is hiding. Ancient banks. The practice of lending valuables at interest dates back to ancient times, long before the advent of money. People already exchanged goods or services with the obligation to return more than was received. With the advent of a monetary economy, usury became the basis of credit transactions. One of the oldest legal documents, the Laws of Hammurabi, compiled in the 18th century BC, already contains articles regulating usury. For example, Babylonian laws limited the interest rate and prohibited collecting debts from people affected by natural disasters, which can be considered an early form of protecting the rights of borrowers. Real banks, as full-fledged credit organizations, appeared in Babylon around the 8th century BC. These institutions provided services related to storing money, lending, and currency exchange. In ancient Greece, banking functions were performed by trapezites, people who were engaged in currency exchange. However, their activities were not limited to this. They opened accounts for their clients, provided loans, and even carried out money transfers. Thus, even then, banks played an important role in the economy. In ancient times and the Middle Ages, loans with interest were often condemned and prohibited by religions. Christianity and Islam actively fought usury, considering it an immoral and unrighteous activity. Nevertheless, the need for loans always existed, and people found ways to circumvent religious prohibitions. For example, in medieval Europe, Jews who were not subject to Christian prohibitions often became usurers, which made them an important part of the economic system of that time. The mysterious harpy. The Queen of the Night relief, created around 1800 BC, is one of the most enigmatic artifacts of Mesopotamia. Also known as the Burney relief, it depicts a winged goddess with bird claws instead of feet, standing on the backs of two lions. On either side of her are owls, symbolizing power over the darkness of the night and the spirit world. The identity of the depicted goddess remains a subject of debate. Some researchers believe that this is Ishtar, Inanna, the Babylonian goddess of love, war, and fertility. Others suggest that the relief depicts Ereshkigal, the dark mistress of the underworld, Ishtar's sister. The symbolism of the relief indicates the power and supernatural strength of the goddess. The relief was probably a cult object associated with religious rituals or magical practices. Its rich detail and monumentality speak to the importance of the depicted deity and the beliefs of the era. Today, this artifact is kept in the British Museum. Early Iron Age swords. The swords were discovered during the construction of a new fire station in the Bavarian city of Andechs. These items were funerary. Each sword was buried in a separate grave along with the remains. Swords represent an important transitional stage from the use of bronze to the use of iron in weapons. Both are made of iron, but the earlier one was made in the shape and style of a Bronze Age sword. The later one, made in the same period, had an adapted design to take advantage of the stronger and more stable metal. The swords are 76 and 66 centimeters long and 6 centimeters wide. While the shorter one was probably mainly used as a stabbing weapon in hand-to-hand combat, the longer and heavier one was more suitable as a stabbing weapon that a fighter could wield from above, for example, from a horse. At the Bavarian State Heritage Office in Munich, a team of restorers cleaned the swords using microfine shot blasting technology and examined them more closely. The restorers managed to find traces of a horn on one of the so-called hilt tongues, and the hilt was probably made from this material. Two blades also contained the remains of a layered linen weave fabric, as well as the remains of a cord that must have been wrapped around it in several places. Presumably, the weapons were wrapped in cloth and buried. Fused gold coins. In the Roman city of Istria, on the western coast of the Black Sea, archaeologists discovered a treasure trove, but in a form that immediately raised alarm. More than 40 coins and metal jewelry were not neatly stacked, but fused together, as if someone had thrown them into a furnace. It later became clear the hoard had perished in a fire almost 2,000 years ago, along with the house in which it was stored. The fire was so intense that the metals melted and solidified, preserving the shape of a wooden box, long since vanished. The coins themselves, however, remained recognizable, round with discernible contours. This is a rare case where a catastrophe did not destroy a find, but literally preserved a moment of life. The house where the hoard was discovered was far from poor. Stone paving stones, painted walls, high-quality ceramics all point to a wealthy family. Archaeologists speculate that the owner either didn't have time to save the valuables or simply didn't expect the fire to destroy everything in a matter of hours. Istria was an important city of the Roman Empire during the Principate, but even here, people lived with a sense of instability. The treasure, simultaneously hidden and lost, shows how fragile was the order that we used to think of as strong. 1,500-year-old relic. Archaeologists from Innsbruck have discovered a rare ivory reliquary in an early Christian church in Eerie, southern Austria. This unique artifact, which is about 1,500 years old, is a box measuring approximately 20 by 30 centimeters, decorated with Christian symbols. A team of archaeologists led by Gerald Grabherr has been excavating the region since 2016. On August 4, 2022, they found the reliquary under the altar in the side chapel of the church. Although the artifact was damaged, researchers were able to identify it as a pyx, a round ivory container richly decorated with Christian motifs. This discovery was the first of its kind in Austria. There are about 40 such chests known throughout the world, and the last one was found about 100 years ago. Most pyx are kept in cathedral treasures or displayed in museums, making this find especially valuable. Ivory lying underground absorbs moisture, becomes soft, and is susceptible to destruction. Conservation of the artifact required careful and lengthy drying to prevent shrinkage and cracks. For 2 years, fragments of the reliquary were preserved for scientific analysis. Researchers are working on a 3D reconstruction of the pyx. This process will provide a deeper understanding of the history and significance of this unique find. Ram in the thicket. Southern Iraq. In 1928, Leonard Woolley opens up a royal cemetery and pulls out of the rubble what at first looks like a fallen wooden stick with lumps of metal. After restoration, a figure appears. An animal on its hind legs reaches for a branched bush structure. It was given a poetic nickname, Ram in the Thicket, although zoologically it is more likely a goat with curled horns. Age, about 2,550 BC, that is 4.5 thousand years. The figurines were found in a rich burial of a noble Sumerian, next to whom lay the sacrificial remains, 68 women and 5 men. This was a status ritual. A person did not go to the afterlife alone. The ram is made of wood covered with thin sheets of metal, copper gilding, inlaid with lapis lazuli and a shell. The diamond-shaped pattern on the base may refer to the mountains. The branched bush is often interpreted as the world tree, the connection between earth and sky. There is a practical version. The figurines served as stands for bowls for the ritual of sacrifice. The animal stands on its hind legs and supports a branch. A vessel with a drink or sacrificial liquid could be placed there during the ceremony. The Sumerian world is concentrated in one small thing: the sacrifice of the elite, the work of the best artisans, the symbolism of the cosmos, and practical altar inventory. The ram in the thicket reminds us that for ancient people, beauty, faith, and a household object lived peacefully in one, and that is why such artifacts survive thousands of years. Signals on old photographic plates. Sometimes the future hides not in new telescopes, but in old archive boxes. In the United States, photographic plates from the 1950s, old observatory series taken long before the digital age, were recently re-examined. Strange flashes were noticed in these images, small bright dots that appear only in one frame and disappear in the next. Astronomers call such objects transients. Typically, they are defects or rare bursts of cosmic rays. But here a chain began that can no longer be called a coincidence. Scientists compared the dates of these dots' appearance with the nuclear test calendar, and it turned out that the probability of such a flash increased by almost 45% in the 24 hours following the explosion. In other words, the sky literally reacted. and not with the light of the explosion, which couldn't be reflected for 24 hours, but with the appearance of unknown objects, which were recorded on the photographic plates as fast, single-frame pulses. And it gets even stranger. Researchers investigated the UFO reports of those days. They discovered that the more press reports, the more transients in the images. It was as if two independent systems, human eyes and old cameras, were recording the same phenomenon, but from different angles, as if something were reacting to nuclear tests. The transients weren't atmospheric flares, their spectra don't match plasma or light from heated air. They weren't plate defects. Matching between different observatories can't be attributed to emulsion chemistry. And they weren't satellites. In the 1950s, they simply didn't exist in sufficient numbers, and the orbits of the first spacecraft are known down to the second. As a result, the researchers came up with a strange statistic. Every time a person detonated something on Earth, the sky responded. What exactly appeared over the test site on those days? No one knows. But now that we see an object flying near Earth that reacts to solar flares, changes its trajectory, and displays strange signals, these archival images no longer look like a museum exhibit. Surrounded by two goddesses. In 1908, archaeologists made a stunning discovery. 4,500-year-old statues of Pharaoh Menkaure hidden in the sands of Giza. These sculptures have been preserved in almost perfect condition, demonstrating the highest skill of ancient Egyptian sculptors. Menkaure was not just a ruler, but the builder of one of the great pyramids, and here he is depicted surrounded by two goddesses. To the left of the pharaoh stands Hathor, the goddess of love, motherhood, and the sky, symbolizing protection and divine patronage. To the right is a female figure personifying one of the nomes, regions of Egypt, emphasizing the importance of the king as the unifier of the country. These compositions not only exalted the pharaoh, but also emphasized his connection with the gods. The sculptures of Menkaure are some of the most impressive examples of ancient Egyptian art. They lift the curtain on the past, allowing us to glimpse how the Egyptians perceived power, divinity, and kingship. Message from aliens. Easter Island, lost in the South Pacific Ocean, became famous for its giant stone statues, moai, and mysterious tablets with Rongo Rongo writing. These ancient tablets, covered with strange hieroglyphs, still remain one of the greatest archaeological mysteries. Scientists believe that Rongo Rongo is the writing of the Rapa Nui civilization, which flourished on the island until the 18th century. The story of their discovery begins in 1864 when the French missionary Eugene Araud first noticed wooden tablets covered with unusual signs. The tablets were made of Toromira wood, which grows on the island, and were found in almost every home. However, most of these artifacts soon disappeared due to internecine wars and destruction. About 25 tablets have survived, and their study revealed a unique writing style reminiscent of inverted boustrophedon. This method of writing signs was previously found only among the Incas. The tablets depict figures of animals, plants, and anthropomorphic creatures. Scientists assume that these symbols could have been used to record rituals and myths. Of particular interest are the similarities between Rongo Rongo and other ancient scripts. Some signs resemble the hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt, India, as well as the symbols of the Harappan civilization that flourished in the Indus Valley. Parallels were even drawn with the writings of the Kuna Indians from Central America and the drawings on the island of Sumatra. This gives rise to theories about possible connections between ancient cultures across the ocean. Attempts to decipher Rongo Rongo are still ongoing, but it has not yet been possible to fully understand these writings. One version is the description of rituals with sacrifices to the gods. Another hypothesis, more fantastic, suggests an extraterrestrial origin of these signs, hinting at contact with alien civilizations. Otherwise, how could people living on different continents have similar writing in those distant times? And in our time, having a huge amount of communication with each other through phones, satellites, and the internet, we speak different languages. The mystery of Rongo Rongo remains unsolved, but its study continues to inspire scientists and enthusiasts around the world. Cursed emeralds. These emeralds, which are called cursed, became one of the most tragic finds in the history of treasure hunting. They were discovered by J. Miskovich, a man who dedicated his life to searching for ancient treasures. In 2010, off the coast of Florida, he managed to find a deposit of emeralds valued at several $million. At first glance, this was luck, capable of changing his life for the better. However, the find soon attracted the attention of not only the media, but also federal agencies, including the FBI. Legal proceedings and inspections began, the purpose of which was to determine the origin of the precious stones. Complex legal battles and public pressure turned Miscovich's life into a nightmare. Constant accusations and pressure from the authorities made his existence unbearable, and he eventually committed suicide. This tragedy became the basis for the legend of the Cursed Emeralds, which brought their owner not wealth and success, but pain and suffering. Today, the story serves as a grim reminder that great discoveries can sometimes have horrific consequences. Lednica Face. Poland, Lednica Lake. During work on the coastal zone of the First Piast fortress, archaeologists raised a 1.34-meter-long oak beam, part of the fortress hook that kept the rampart from falling apart. At one end, there is a carved human face, an oval rim, an arc above the forehead, a rounded chin. The size is approximately 13.5 by 10 centimeters. The face did not look into the fortress, but towards the water. Dendrochronology gave the exact age of the tree felling, around 960 to 975 AD, the same time when the prince's residence, chapel, and baptismal pools stood on Lednis Island. For the Slavs of the 10th century, carved human faces on building elements are a rarity. Here the image was brought out to the outside of the rampart as if someone addressed it to the lake. Perhaps this is the image of the spirit of water or the patron saint of the crossing. Perhaps a reminder of Christianity on the verge of paganism. The island is a key point of baptism of the Polish lands. They compare it with the Slavic anthropomorphic figurines from Wolan and four-faced idols. There are stylistic echoes but no direct analogies. The carved face is currently undergoing conservation. The wood is being stabilized so that it does not crack in the air. The plan is to display the find in the Museum of the First Piasts in the second half of 2026. Ultra-rare discovery. A rare mastodon tusk was found in Florida, which became a real sensation. 29-year-old Alex Lundberg, while diving with his friend near Venice Beach, came across this unique artifact. Typically, only prehistoric shark teeth and fragments of mammoth tusks are found in this area, which makes Lundberg's find especially valuable. Experts from the Bishop Bradenton Museum of Science and Nature confirmed the authenticity of the tusk, labeling it as ultra-rare. Lundberg has yet to notify the Florida Museum of Natural History to assess the scientific significance of the find. Mastodon tusks are typically only a few inches long and sell for $20 to $350. However, Lundberg's find could be worth about $5,000. Interestingly, the tusk did not fall apart when lifted from the seabed. Mastodons, which lived 5.4 million years ago and became extinct about 10,000 years ago, were relatives of modern elephants. Their fossils are usually found in Pliocene and Pleistocene sediments. Interestingly, mastodon fossils, including tusks, bones, and skulls, are typically found in only 4 U.S. states: Indiana, Colorado, California, and New York. The Florida find therefore represents a rare and significant discovery. Pregnancy in silver. In a 10th century burial in Sweden, archaeologists found a small silver pendant. It was neither ornate nor particularly large, but its shape immediately caught their eye. The pendant depicted a woman with a rounded belly, a pronounced posture, and her hands placed beneath her belly, as if protecting it. This is an extremely rare subject in Viking Age art. The pendant was discovered in the early 20th century, but for a long time it remained almost unnoticed. Only later did researchers notice its details. The figure wears a cloak adorned with beads, and the lines above her head resemble a headdress or crown. Some archaeologists associate this image with the goddess Freya, patroness of fertility and birth. The context of the burial adds further questions. Silver rings, an Islamic coin, a bone gaming board, and a staff with a wolf's head were found nearby. Such an arrangement indicates the woman's high status and possible ritual role. However, such objects are almost never found in later graves, suggesting a time when pagan traditions were already being supplanted by Christianity. This pendant remains a rare visual testimony to how the Vikings represented pregnancy, not as a mundane detail, but as a condition worthy of symbolism and protection. Aliens in antiquity. The concept of aliens has been around for a very long time. Long before human civilization developed a scientifically based understanding of the cosmos, people around the world looked up into the sky above and wondered what was there. Some ancient societies inhabited these vast, mysterious expanses with gods. beings responsible for the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. In the past, people were also often persecuted for thinking differently. This was the case even in ancient Greece, despite the fact that it was famous for its innovative philosophers. When the philosopher Anaxagoras, who was trying to give a scientific explanation for such seemingly supernatural phenomena for those times as eclipses and rainbows, suggested that the moon is not a god, but a large stone, and the sun is also a stone, but hot, he was arrested and sentenced to death. Anaxagoras also considered the possibility that the moon might be habitable, which was a highly controversial suggestion, contradicting the dominant view of the cosmos as outlined by Plato and Aristotle. The belief in the existence of other worlds was taken up by many philosophers, including Epicurus, who once wrote to the historian Herodotus that there are an unlimited number of cosmoses, and some of them are like ours, and some are not. This belief, however weak, was preserved in ancient Rome. Nothing in the universe is unique, wrote the Roman poet Lucretius, and therefore in other distant spaces there must be other lands inhabited by various tribes of people and breeds of animals. Although Plato and Aristotle lived in a pre-Christian world, their ideas about the universe helped shape the doctrine of the Christian faith. In the Middle Ages, this belief proclaimed that the earth was created by God as the center of the universe. The story of Jesus Christ, who sacrificed himself to forgive the sins of man, established humanity as the most significant of all creations. If other worlds existed, they could not be inhabited. After all, if they existed, it would automatically reduce the significance of the crucifixion. Dominican monk, mathematician, and cosmological theorist Giordano Bruno did not wait until his death to share ideas about the universe. In 3 dialogues published between 1584 and 1591, Bruno suggested that some distant stars might be suns like ours, that planets also revolve around these suns, and finally that some of these planets may be inhabited by life similar to the Earth. These views irritated the Church, and in addition, Bruno's interest in magic and the occult led to his arrest in 1592. Refusing to renounce heresy, he was burned at the stake after 7 years of imprisonment and torture. Not all participants in the scientific revolution believed in the existence of aliens. Galileo, a devout Catholic, considered the talk of extraterrestrials blasphemous. British polymath William Whewell opposed the theory of many worlds, defending a special relationship between God and humanity. But oddly enough, his religiously motivated thesis, set forth in an 1853 book called On the Plurality of Worlds, turned out to be more scientifically accurate than the pagan astronomers he criticized. Whewell found an ally in Alfred Russel Wallace, a British naturalist credited with formulating the theory of evolution by natural selection along with Charles Darwin. Our Earth is almost certainly the only habitable planet in our solar system, Wallace wrote in 1903. But even if life exists somewhere in the universe, Wallace was adamant that it could never reach the level of sophistication we find on Earth. Despite the fact that life outside the Earth may well exist, there has never been any evidence of this. Our telescopes do not allow a good look at potentially habitable planets, and radio observation of space does not give anything. The aliens also seem to be in no hurry to contact us. This situation is known as the Fermi paradox. It can be formulated as follows: alien civilizations must exist, but why haven't they made contact yet? Rare giant book. Here is one of 12 giant books from the 18th century written in Spanish. Its size is impressive, almost a meter in length. These books were created for religious ceremonies and contain detailed scripts for the services. Leather binding, wooden covers, pages made of tanned animal skin. All this made the book not only durable but also a symbol of the greatness of the church. Such manuscripts were intended for use in churches where priests and choirs could read the text from afar. That is why the letters are so large. Today, this rarity is kept in the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Scientists and restorers carefully study it, trying to preserve it in its original form. These books are a real window into the past, allowing you to see what liturgical texts looked like and what the attitude to writing was in the era of colonial Latin America. Tomb of the Last Anunnaki King. Gilgamesh, king of Uruk, is one of the most important and mysterious figures in the history of ancient Mesopotamia. He not only became the central figure in one of the oldest epic poems, but also left a deep mark on culture and religion. Gilgamesh, whose name is still surrounded by mysticism, was an outstanding ruler whose achievements became the basis for many myths and legends. During his reign, Gilgamesh was known as a great builder, strategist, and warrior. He is credited with creating the massive city walls of Uruk, which protected the inhabitants from enemies and natural disasters. These walls, according to legend, were so impressive that the gods themselves took part in their construction. In addition, the reign of Gilgamesh is associated with a period of economic prosperity and cultural flourishing, which made Uruk an important center of the ancient world. Gilgamesh became a central figure in mythology thanks to the epic poem about his exploits known as the Epic of Gilgamesh. This literary monument, found in the library of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, describes the travels and adventures of Gilgamesh, his struggles with natural and supernatural forces, and his quest for immortality. This poem is not only an essential source for the study of ancient Mesopotamian culture, but also reflects the eternal human aspirations and experiences. Archaeological finds confirm the historicity of Gilgamesh. Excavations at Uruk and other Mesopotamian cities have uncovered many artifacts, including cuneiform tablets with texts and inscriptions mentioning his name. Of particular importance is the found tomb, which, according to some versions, may belong to Gilgamesh himself. This discovery, if confirmed, could be key to understanding the historical figure of Gilgamesh. Among the archaeological finds, particular attention is drawn to texts describing the Anunnaki, deities who played an important role in the mythology of ancient Mesopotamia. The Anunnaki, believed to be the descendants of the sky god An and the earth goddess Ki, were associated with the creation of humanity and control of its destiny. Theories about the influence of the Anunnaki extend far beyond Mesopotamia, linking them with other ancient civilizations and even with extraterrestrial visitors from the planet Nibiru. Comparing the Nibiru theory with other theories of cataclysms, such as the flood or the fall of the Tunguska meteorite, demonstrates a wide range of hypotheses about the origin and development of humanity. The discovery of Gilgamesh's tomb could shed light on many aspects of the life and reign of this legendary king, as well as confirm or refute numerous myths about him. An artifact more valuable than gold. In 2023, in Carlisle in the north of England, on the site of an ancient Roman bath, a unique artifact made of a special substance was discovered, more valuable than gold for the ancient Romans. This item, found by volunteers and archaeologists, is a solid example of Tyrian purple. To obtain this ancient dye, it was necessary to process about 12,000 shellfish living in the Mediterranean region. Tyrian purple, best known for its production in the city of Tyre in Lebanon, was prized for its brightness and durability and was used for dyeing clothing and wall paintings. The process of its production was complex and labor-intensive, which made this pigment extremely expensive and accessible only to the highest strata of society of the Roman Empire. The specimen found at Carlisle was used to create murals or dye fabrics. This is the only known example of a solid example of Tyrian purple in Northern Europe and possibly throughout the Roman Empire. This discovery not only highlights the complexity and richness of ancient Roman culture, but also contributes to further study of the interactions of ancient civilizations and the spread of their cultural and material achievements beyond traditional boundaries. Prehistoric Swiss knife. South African archaeologists have found that mid-Stone Age African Howisson's port-type tools, which are functionally very similar to Swiss Army knives, looked almost the same over vast expanses. This indicates that early humans actively exchanged information and communicated with each other. The tools of the Howisson's port industry were produced in huge quantities over 5 millennia and were very perfect for their time. At a later time, there was a degradation of technology, and after some time, a new takeoff. The blades, made 60,000 years ago, were in many respects superior to the stone tools of the late Stone Age, which came only 25,000 years later. Numerous highly versatile blades have been used for many different purposes, including the use as hunting tools, hand-thrown spears, and possibly also a bow and arrow, felling trees and branches, meat, bones, leather dressing, etc. At the same time, all the blades looked very similar and were made according to a uniform pattern throughout the south of the African continent. All this indicates that people of that time must have actively shared the secrets of their manufacture and other information with each other. That is, they were all then socially connected. The most dangerous manuscript in the world. Marie Curie is a famous experimental scientist, an outstanding chemist, and a radioactivity researcher who received 2 Nobel Prizes, one in 1903 in physics, the second in 1911 in chemistry. But why are her notebooks considered dangerous? The answer does not lie in the knowledge they contain. Marie Curie, together with her husband Pierre Curie, discovered the radioactive elements polonium and radium and developed methods for isolating radioactive isotopes. When scientists discovered radium, they had no idea about its harm to the body. Therefore, no protective measures were taken. Samples of the substance were carried in pockets and stored without precautions. Marie Curie died in 1934 from aplastic anemia, a blood disease caused by radiation. Many of the scientists who worked with her also died of leukemia and other radiation-related diseases. While working in the laboratory, Curie received a huge dose of radiation and became radioactive herself. After her death, she was buried in a lead coffin that blocks radiation. Personal belongings, including notebooks, were transferred to the National Library of France, where they are stored in lead boxes, as they remain radioactive. Today, access to Marie Curie's notebooks is difficult. To view her manuscripts, you must sign a disclaimer form at the Bibliothèque Nationale de France and obtain permission. Viewing of records takes place in a special room away from other reading rooms of the library. The visitor must wear a protective suit and use a dosimeter. Experts have found that the radiation dose for a person in a protective suit working with Curie notebooks is insignificant. Even with regular contact throughout the year, the maximum radiation dose will be about 10 USV microsievert per hour. For comparison, during a flight at an altitude of 10 kilometers, a person receives 5 MSVH. Thus, a 2-hour flight from Berlin to Barcelona will give the same radiation dose as a year of working with Curie notebooks. The Curie notebooks remain the most dangerous known manuscripts due to radioactivity. Reading them without a protective suit is extremely dangerous. Marie Curie's personal belongings will not be touched without protection for about 1,500 years, since the half-life of radium-226 is 1,600 years. Tried to hide it from the government. During the construction of a house in the village of Mohammadpur Baganki, Haryana, India, ancient bronze idols dating back about 400 years were found. The statues depicting the Hindu deities Vishnu and Mata Lakshmi are distinguished by exquisite carvings and designs. The owner of the site tried to hide the discovery by offering the builder who discovered the artifacts money for silence. However, the builder contacted the police, and thus the authorities learned about the existence of the idols. Local residents, regarding the idols as a divine blessing, expressed a desire to build a temple on this site, but the Department of Archaeology refused, saying that the artifacts were the property of the state and should be preserved for study and subsequent storage in a museum. The statues are currently undergoing scientific analysis to determine their exact age and history. Previously, scientists confirmed that the idols are about 400 years old. Researchers are also looking for inscriptions or marks on the idols that could shed light on their origins. Mysterious stumps on the seashore. The purpose of the mysterious Bronze Age structure known as Seahenge has long puzzled archaeologists since its discovery in 1999 on a beach in Norfolk, England. However, recently, scientists seem to have unraveled its mystery. Seahenge, or Hill 1, is an upturned oak stump surrounded by 55 split trunks. It was built in the late spring of 2049 BC on a salt marsh protected by dunes and mudflats. Amateur archaeologist John Lorimer discovered the site when he spotted a bronze axe head in the sand. He started digging and found a tree stump with a ritual ring around it. This discovery caused strong protests from local residents, but archaeologists took Hill 1 to the Lynn Museum, where parts of it were protected with wax. Hill 2, found nearby and left in place, was almost completely destroyed by the tides. Archaeologists suggest that these structures were built to control the weather. In those days, the climate was harsh, with frosty winters and late springs, which greatly affected agriculture. The Seahenge logs were cut in the spring and positioned to coincide with sunrise on the summer solstice. This is due to the belief that the cuckoo, symbolizing fertility, returns to the other world, and with it, summer goes away. The ritual with the cuckoo was supposed to catch it in order to prolong the summer. At the center of Hill 2, sacrifices were made to Venus, which was believed to help agriculture. These rituals were performed every 8 years according to the cycle of Venus. Thus, both monuments sought, in different ways, to put an end to the harsh cold. Palm Scroll. In 1938, an amazing discovery was made in India. Ancient palm scrolls containing extensive knowledge about medicine, astronomy, and other sciences. These scrolls are over 4,000 years old, making them one of the oldest libraries in the world. The contents of the scrolls are striking in their diversity. From medical treatises describing the treatment of various diseases to astronomical records detailing the movements of planets and stars. These scrolls represent an invaluable cultural heritage that provides a window into the world of ancient knowledge and practices. They confirm the high level of development of science and medicine in ancient India. Of particular interest is the technique of their creation and preservation. Palm leaves, carefully processed and recorded, could store information for thousands of years. The connection between past and present archaeologists. While excavating an ancient Gaulish settlement near the town of Eerie in northern France, archaeology students discovered a 200-year-old message in a glass bottle. The bottle was hidden in a clay pot along with 2 coins. The message was left by 19th century archaeologist Pharaoh, who had worked on the same site almost 2 centuries earlier. Written in January 1825, the message reads, P.J. Pharaoh, a native of Dieppe, a member of various intellectual societies, carried out excavations here in January 1825. He continues his researches in this area known as the Citadel of Limes, or the Camp of Caesar. The excavations, led by archaeologist Guillaume Blondel, were originally aimed at investigating an ancient Gaulish settlement located on the cliffs near Dieppe. The site is subject to erosion, which has forced emergency excavations. The team has already found numerous artifacts dating back 2,000 years, including pottery shards. Pharaoh's report not only documents the history of the research, but also creates a rare link between past and present archaeologists. The mythical gold mine. In 1929, Australia found its Indiana Jones, Lewis Harold Bell Lassiter. He claimed that 3 decades earlier he had discovered a huge gold reef in the heart of the continent. There was almost no evidence, but rumors of a missing Klondike excited prospectors and historians. In 1930, Lassiter managed to assemble an expedition and set off into the outback again. He was accompanied by a pilot, 2 prospectors, Aboriginal guides, and even a representative of the governor. However, Lassiter was sullen, confused in his stories, and reluctant to show the way. Having reached Mount Marjorie, he declared that they were lost. His companions considered him an imposter and left. Lassiter was left with only a hunter, but soon the hunter also abandoned him. As a result, Harold continued on his way alone. A year later, he was found dead in a cave. According to his diary, he died of exhaustion after spending his last months among the natives trying to survive. Meanwhile, the legend of the reef did not die out. Numerous prospectors combed the McDonnell Range in the hope of finding gold. The press discussed the mysterious Swede Olof Johansson, who allegedly also knew the way to the treasure. Later, books and films appeared. Director Luke Walker in the project Lassiter's Bones found letters from Harold mentioning that same Olaf and hinting at the lost reef. Modern research has not confirmed large deposits in the designated area, although geologist Bill DeCarly came across a quartz layer reminiscent of Lassiter's description. He believes that Harold was just retelling other people's stories. Nevertheless, the mystery of the treasure continues to excite the minds of romantics and gold hunters. Gold of the steppe elite. In the mountains of southeastern Kazakhstan, archaeologists have uncovered burial mounds that had long been overlooked by major research. The Zhetysu region was known for its rich collection of monuments, but these burials had attracted little attention until recent excavations. Beneath layers of earth were graves belonging to the Saka elite from the 4th to 3rd centuries BC. Inside, gold jewelry, earrings, beads, bronze pins, and rare objects with distinct symbolism were found. One of these was a bone artifact in the shape of a serpent dragon. Its purpose is unclear, but researchers believe it was associated with spiritual beliefs and protection. Gold was used here not as a display of wealth, but as a sign of status and belonging to a certain circle. Particularly noteworthy was the double burial of a woman and a child. Gold earrings were found next to the child's skull. The child was approximately 3 years old. This prompted archaeologists to consider how early status could have been assigned and transmitted by birth. One of the burial mounds was 40 meters in diameter and 4 meters high. The scale of the work and the quality of the artifacts indicate that we are not dealing with disparate tribes, but with a society with a clear hierarchy, rituals, and notions of power that extended far beyond the lifetime of a single generation. Flint hand drill. In the early 1960s, a farmer near Kankakee, Illinois, was digging a basement and dug out a strange object from the clay, a flint rod tightly gripped by a stone ring like a modern bearing. The photo was spread across all the newspapers in the section on forbidden artifacts, and the find was quickly dubbed a flint hand drill. Supposedly, the Indians had high-precision drilling technologies long before steel. Legend has it that the ring rotated freely without erasing the seat, a sign of grinding on the tool no worse than diamond. In fact, the artifact never passed any examination. After the death of its owner, the thing disappeared into a private collection. And in Illinois museums, there are only ordinary microdrills, small flint tips used to drill shells and bone. Archaeologists who have seen the original photo suggest that the drill could be a fragment of a 19th century clay pipe worn down to a deceptive smoothness by time. But until the stone itself is put under a microscope, the story will live on and fill online catalogs of so-called out-of-place artifacts, reminding us how easily one unclear photo can turn into evidence of prehistoric drilling tools. Singing temple underground. Imagine descending 3 floors under the Maltese soil in Hal Saflieni. The corridors were carved out 5,000 years ago, but the main magic is in the Oracle Hall. A whisper there turns into a hum, and a low male voice at a frequency of about 111 Hz makes the walls vibrate so much that the chest trembles. Scientists have checked. This is exactly the resonance of the human body. A minute and a half, and you feel like the sound is coming from inside the bones. In the fall of 2024, Italian acoustics illuminated the temple with a laser scanner and found another cavity behind a filled-in manhole. It also sings at the same 111 Hz. It turns out that the ancient masters deliberately carved out a whole chain of sound rooms. The priest said one word, and the vibrations rolled throughout the hippogym, putting those present into a light trance. A ritual does not need better technology. The chamber is not being cleared yet for fear of collapsing the vaults, but they are planning to launch a thin microphone probe. If anything other than stone is found there, figurines, vessels, maybe bones, it will become clear that this was not just a crypt, but a laboratory of ancient sound. For now, under a quiet tourist street lives the oldest speaker on the planet, tuned 5,000 years ago and still working without a single crack. There is only one question. How could people 5,000 years ago so accurately calculate the acoustics they needed in the cave? New species of predator. Scientists have discovered the skull of Bastatoden Certos in the Egyptian desert, a new species of predator that lived 30 million years ago. This large carnivorous mammal belonged to the extinct group of hyaenodonts and occupied the top of the food chain, hunting primates, ancient hippos, and elephants. Bastetodon got its name in honor of the goddess Bastet, patroness of cats and protector from troubles. Its muzzle and teeth really resemble those of a cat. This animal was comparable in size to a leopard, had powerful jaws and sharp teeth, allowing it to be a formidable hunter. The discovery was made in the Fayum Depression, which millions of years ago was a green forest and is now turned into a desert. This place is a storehouse of knowledge about the ancient ecosystems of Africa. Hyaenodonts dominated among predators, but climate change and the emergence of more advanced competitors led to their extinction. Now their place in nature has been taken by the ancestors of modern cats and dogs. Birth certificate. Here is one of the oldest birth certificates created over 4,000 years ago in the Sumerian civilization. It consists of 2 clay tablets, one covered in cuneiform writing and the other with a footprint of a child. In ancient Mesopotamia, such tablets were used as official documents confirming the birth of a person. The cuneiform text probably contains the child's name, the names of the parents, the date of birth, and perhaps even astrological predictions. And the footprint served as a kind of personal signature, a unique way to identify the baby. This artifact shows how developed the bureaucratic systems were in Sumer. Even then, people understood the importance of documentation, and such records could be used to confirm inheritance or social rights. This is a real window into the ancient world, which seems so distant, but in some ways is very similar to ours. Unfinished antediluvian structure. In the mysterious valleys of Lebanon lies Baalbek, a city that holds the mysteries of ancient times. A newly discovered structure at the site adds new information, confirming Baalbek's unique significance to archaeology and world culture. For a long time, the megalithic architecture of Baalbek remained a mystery to scientists. The construction methods and reasons for creating such large-scale structures had no analogs. However, the latest discovery offers new interpretations and opportunities for understanding ancient civilizations. Baalbek, located in the Bekaa Valley, is known for its important role in the Hellenistic and Roman periods. Since its conquest by Alexander the Great, the city has undergone significant changes, becoming a bridge between Eastern and Western cultures. Greek culture left its mark on the architecture and art of Baalbek, as can be seen from the stylistic features of its buildings. The Romans, in turn, expanded and strengthened its status as a religious and cultural center by erecting magnificent temples and public buildings. The most famous buildings in Baalbek are the temples dedicated to Jupiter, Venus, and Bacchus. These temples are known not only for their magnificence, but also for the technical achievements embodied in their designs. One of the most significant elements is the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a giant megalith weighing over 1,000 tons, which was never included in the final design of the temple. The discovery at the quarry in 2014 only added to the mystery surrounding these ancient construction methods. The find showed that ancient builders used technologies ahead of their time, raising questions about the origins and spread of ancient engineering knowledge. Comparing Baalbek with other ancient wonders such as Stonehenge and the Egyptian pyramids, one can see commonalities in the logistics and engineering approaches. For example, transporting the huge stones for Stonehenge or building the pyramids at Giza required not only physical resources, but also advanced planning and astronomical knowledge. Modern archaeological methods such as ground-penetrating radar and 3D scanning are opening new horizons in the study of ancient technologies. Nazis and ancient giants. Among the many occult and pseudoscientific theories that the Nazis actively promoted through the Ahnenerbe organization, one of the most mysterious is the idea of the existence of ancient races of giants. The Nazis believed that these giants were the ancestors of the Aryans and possessed enormous physical strength, wisdom, and high technology. They were considered an example of the superiority of the Aryan race, which the Nazis sought to prove. The goal of the Ahnenerbe expedition to Tibet, South America, and Scandinavia was to find archaeological evidence of the existence of giants. These searches were part of a larger program aimed at finding artifacts that could reinforce the Nazi ideology of the purity and superiority of the Aryan race. There is a version that in some expeditions the remains of giant creatures were found: skeletons, skulls, and bones of enormous size. These finds were supposedly to be used in Nazi propaganda to support ancient myths about a great race from which they believed the Aryans originated. However, no reliable scientific evidence of these finds has ever been published, and much of the information about such expeditions remains at the level of legends and rumors. The idea of ancient giants fit well with the mythology on which the Nazi ideology was built, associated with the search for Aryan roots and the revival of ancient semi-mythical civilizations. What are the pipes in the mountains of China? On the slopes of Mount Baigong in the Qinghai province of China lies a thing that has for years fed ufologists better than any Roswell. Hundreds of rusty metal pipes jut straight out of the rock, some as thin as needles, some as thick as 40 centimeters in diameter. Some of them extend toward a salt lake about 80 meters away. And the most disturbing thing about this story is that many of the pipes look as if they were welded into the rock. Too deep, too smooth, too strange for a place where almost no one lives except the occasional nomad. The initial investigations only added fuel to the fire. The composition seemed normal. 92% familiar minerals and metals, and the remaining 8% was listed as unknown material, and so it went. Alien base, laboratory, space infrastructure. A monument with a plate even appeared near the mountain because the legend became stronger than common sense. But then something happened that I love most about archaeology. The reality turned out to be no more boring than the myth, but simply unpleasantly clever. Modern analysis revealed organic plant traces, microstructures resembling tree rings. And the theory is this: these aren't pipes in the conventional sense, but fossilized casts of ancient tree roots. Water from a long-vanished lake once carried the roots, and then the processes of soil formation and the transformation of soil into rock preserved them so that today they look like man-made objects. So, no alien plumbers. The planet simply knows how to create decorations that look like evidence. Alien's hand. Walking along the beach in Brazil, you can find shells, pebbles, small crabs, and an alien hand. And so it happened with one couple who decided to take a romantic walk on the shores of the Atlantic Ocean. The bony, long-fingered hand looks like the friendly alien from Steven Spielberg's E.T. It would seem, here it is, real proof of the presence of an alien on our planet, albeit not entirely. Leticia Gomez Santiago and her boyfriend Devenir Souza took many photos and posted them online. After all, where are the best experts on any topic? Of course, on the internet. The photo was stumbled upon by marine biologist Eric Kamen, who debunked all the myths about the find. He believes that the hand belongs to a representative of cetaceans, the infraorder of mammals, including whales, dolphins, and porpoises, and its creepy appearance is due to the stage of decomposition, which lasts about a year and a half. People have been trying for many years to find at least some clear evidence of the existence of alien life, but scientists always come who can explain this or that artifact from a scientific point of view. In this case, the find indicates that the cetaceans that now live in the seas and oceans walked on land 50 million years ago. Under the interdigital flesh of the whale or dolphin flippers are 5 fingers or a 5-fingered limb. This is found in humans, amphibians, and a number of other animals, which indicates their common ancestor. A couple, in addition to photos, took a video of their hand to show how big it is. The biologist believes that this is part of a dolphin, of which there are a lot. Usually, such bones should not be removed from the beach, so as not to interfere with the natural cycle of nutrients in the ecosystem. But scientists are in a hurry to study the recently deceased animals to find out the exact cause of death. After all, this may not be the accidental death of one dolphin, but the emergence of a mass epidemic or the extinction of animals due to the release of harmful substances into the water. From the study of dolphins, we will smoothly move on to the treasures of the Aztecs. The mystery of the Herculaneum Scroll. Thanks to artificial intelligence and advanced X-ray technology, scientists have managed to decipher the text of one of the ancient Herculaneum scrolls for the first time. These unique artifacts, which survived the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, remained a mystery for almost 2,000 years. The scrolls were discovered in the 1750s among the ruins of a Roman villa. However, after the disaster, they turned into charred, fragile rolls that cannot be unrolled without breaking. Most of them are stored in the National Library of Naples, and a few copies are in Oxford. In 2023, the Vesuvius Challenge was launched to find technologies to decipher these texts. Recently, researchers announced a major breakthrough. Using high-energy X-ray scanning and AI algorithms, they managed to create the first image of the inside of the Oxford Scroll. Scientists have already identified several words, one of which is the Greek for disgust. Although the text is still fragmentary, the method continues to improve. There are more than 1,000 such scrolls in Naples, and now researchers have hope of deciphering them. Ancient Russian bagpipes in the shape of a bird. Recently, archaeologists have discovered an amazing musical instrument in Veliki Novgorod, a leather bagpipe bag in the shape of a bird from the 12th century. This is the first such find in the territory of ancient Rus, which changes our understanding of the musical traditions of our ancestors. The bagpipe bag is made of the finest leather. Its length is about 72 centimeters, width 45. The most unusual thing about the find is the manufacturing technology. The leather was glued in 2 layers without the use of threads, which ensured tightness. This is absolutely atypical for that time. Historians have previously found individual parts of bagpipes in Novgorod. For example, in 2015, they found a playing pipe, and in 2018, a blowing pipe. But a complete one-piece bagpipe in the shape of a bird has been found for the first time. This means that Novgorodians did not just use musical instruments borrowed from other cultures, but had their own tradition of making them. By the way, the shape of the bird could have had a symbolic meaning and was possibly connected with ideas about the spiritual world or natural forces. Similar traditions are known in other regions of Eastern Europe. For example, in Belarus and Poland, the bagpipe is still called duda and koza, one of the most mysterious peoples of Europe. This altar is one of 4 known Larage altars, but the only one found during excavations. The artifact was discovered at the bottom of a well in the Donistebe Monastery. On the altar, there is an inscription: Valeria Vitella fulfills her vow to Lare freely and deservedly. Mount Ariaundi, inhabited since Roman times, is located in the valley of the Gulina River near Pamplona. Its strategic position has made the site important throughout history, as evidenced by the remains of Roman infrastructure and the later monastery dedicated to Saint Stephen. Little is known about Le Roc. Only 3 other altars testify to the worship of this deity. The new find expands the known geographical distribution of the Le Roc cult. Children's drawings in Pompeii. These findings immerse us in the everyday life of ordinary people on the eve of the disaster. Antique graffiti depicting fighting gladiators was found among the ruins of Pompeii. Scientists believe that these scribbles provide a better understanding of the way of thinking of the ancient Romans. The charcoal drawings were discovered among the ruins of the courtyard of the Casa del Secondo Cenacolo Colonnato, colonnaded house of the Second Last Supper. Researchers say the drawings were created by children probably aged 5-7 years. This is confirmed by the fact that nearby there was a silhouette of a small hand outlined in charcoal. This confirms that even ancient Roman children visited amphitheaters to watch bloody spectacles. Graffiti was found on one of the walls of the corridor near the service yard, approximately 1.5 meters from the floor level. The children probably climbed onto the scaffolding. The drawings depict 2 gladiators facing each other. Nearby is a scene of Venatio, hunting games, also with 2 fighters armed with long spears. They appear to be about to fight a pair of wild boars. On the right is the head of a bird of prey, presumably an eagle. In another room, most likely intended for storing amphorae, another series of drawings appeared on the walls, again at a not very high height. These are 3 small hands outlined in charcoal, 2 scenes of gladiators fighting, 2 figures playing with a ball, a boar, and finally, a scene of hand-to-hand combat in which one of the 2 fighters is lying down. Voynich manuscript. One of the most mysterious manuscripts in history, it is an illustrated codex written in an unknown language or code that has not yet been deciphered. According to carbon analysis of the parchment, its creation dates back to the period between 1404 and 1438. Despite research, its origin, authorship, and purpose remain unsolved, which gives rise to many theories and guesses. The manuscript is named after the Polish antiquarian Wilfrid Voynich, who acquired it in 1912. It consists of more than 240 pages with cryptic texts and illustrations that depict bizarre plants, astronomical diagrams, strange people, and unknown chemical processes. The unique language of the manuscript has no analogues, and the font and structure of the text have led to the emergence of many hypotheses. Some scholars suggest that it may be a coded message created using sophisticated cryptography, while others believe that the manuscript is a description of a natural or artificial language. There are theories that the manuscript may have been a hoax, created to confuse scientists and seekers of ancient knowledge. Other versions suggest that it is a scientific or medical reference book, perhaps devoted to alchemy or botany. Some even believe that the Voynich manuscript is a work of speculative fiction or mythopoetry, which is still waiting to be deciphered. Can scientists revive Neanderthals? Just 10 years ago, the idea of bringing back Neanderthals sounded like pure science fiction, but today scientists are talking about it without a smile. The Neanderthal genome has been almost completely decoded, and DNA editing technologies are advancing so rapidly that some experts believe it could theoretically become possible within the next 20 years. Of course, we're not talking about cloning in the traditional sense. Living Neanderthal cells don't exist. All we have are fragments of DNA from bones. The idea is different. Take a human cell and using gene editing replace key sections of DNA with Neanderthal ones. The result will be an embryo that will be as close as possible to the extinct species. But this is where the toughest questions arise. Such an embryo would have to be carried either in the body of a modern woman or in an artificial womb, the technology for which is still being developed. Moreover, no one can guarantee that the mother's body will not reject the fetus or that the child will develop normally. There's another, less technical but far more difficult issue. Even if a Neanderthal were born, what kind of world would they find themselves in? They wouldn't have their own tribe, language, or culture. They would be the sole representative of a species that disappeared tens of thousands of years ago. And here a paradox arises. We are already partially Neanderthals. Most people outside of Africa have up to 4% Neanderthal DNA in their genome. Their legacy has long lived within us. and perhaps the question is no longer whether we can bring back the Neanderthals, but whether we have the right to do so. Pocket computer of the 11th century. British historian Frederica Gigante discovered one of the oldest astrolabes from the 11th century with inscriptions in Arabic and Hebrew in an Italian museum. This astronomical instrument, used to measure angles and determine the positions of stars, became an important find in the museum in Verona. This artifact is so multifunctional that by modern standards it can easily be classified as a pocket computer. Frederica Gigante came across the device while browsing the museum's catalog online and asked for more information, but was told that the object had not yet been studied. Upon arrival at the museum, the scientist discovered not only Arabic but also difficult-to-see Hebrew inscriptions on the astrolabe, which, in her opinion, indicates scientific exchange between the Arab, Jewish, and Christian worlds over the centuries. Research has shown that the astrolabe may have been made in Al-Andalus, a Muslim region in Spain. The instrument retains Muslim prayers and Hebrew lines, highlighting its cultural and religious significance. The similarity of the found astrolabe with Byzantine and early European models confirms the hypothesis of its Iberian origin. This unique artifact is believed to have first come into the collection of Italian aristocrat Ludovico Moscardo in the 17th century and later passed to the Miniscalchi family, who founded the museum in 1990 to preserve their private collection. Ancient image of psychoactive mushrooms. The Tassili in Eger cave, located in the southeastern part of Algeria, is a real treasure trove of prehistoric art. This site is known for its rich rock art spanning thousands of years. Particularly noteworthy is a painting created about 9,000 years ago depicting a shaman with psychedelic mushrooms. This unique artifact provides a window into the spiritual and cultural practices of ancient hunter-gatherers. This painting was first documented by French archaeologist Henri Lotte and his team in the 1950s. They were amazed by the brightness and complexity of the images, among which stood out the figure of a shaman with mushrooms of the genus psilocybe, known for their psychoactive properties. The shaman is depicted with an ornate headdress and war paint indicating his ritual role. The shaman's posture and facial expression clearly demonstrate a state of trance. Psychedelic mushrooms played an important role in shamanic rituals, as evidenced by numerous examples from various cultures. In ancient societies, shamans used mushrooms to achieve an altered state of consciousness and communicate with the spirit world. The Tassili cave paintings indicate that similar practices existed in North Africa. The image of a shaman surrounded by mushrooms and other symbols carries a deep meaning. The headdress and coloring emphasize the high status of the shaman in society, and the mushrooms emphasize their sacred role in rituals. The trance state indicates the shaman's journey beyond the physical world, which was an important part of their spiritual practice. 9 commandments out of 10. The oldest known stone slab with 9 of the 10 commandments carved into it is set to go up for auction. Experts estimate that the price could reach $1, $2 million. The marble slab dates back to between 300 and 500 AD and was discovered in 1913 during railroad construction on the southern coast of modern-day Israel, near the sites of early synagogues, mosques, and churches. The marble slab, which is about 2 feet tall and weighs 115 pounds, contains 20 lines of text in Paleo-Hebrew. It first hit the market in 2016 and sold for $850,000. For a long time after its discovery, the significance of the slab remained unclear. At one point, it was even used as a tile at the entrance to a house, which is why some of the letters were erased. In 1943, archaeologist J. Kaplan acquired the tablet and identified it as the Samaritan Decalogue, created by the Samaritans, an ancient religious group whose beliefs were based on the Old Testament but differed from Judaism. The tablet's text almost completely matches the biblical commandments familiar to both Christians and Jews. However, one of the commandments, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord in vain," is missing. Instead, it is instructed to worship on Mount Gerizim, reflecting the religious beliefs of the Samaritans. The oldest shopping list. When going to the store, many of us make a list of the necessary products on a piece of paper or in the notepad of our smartphone, but it was not always so. During excavations in southern Turkey, archaeologists discovered a unique clay tablet with Akkadian cuneiform, which turned out to be the oldest known shopping list. This document, created 3,500 years ago, gives us an idea of the daily life of the inhabitants of that time. The tablet was found in the ruins of the ancient city of Alalakh. which attracted the attention of scientists in the first half of the 20th century, but due to the war, excavations were suspended and resumed only in the 2000s. Recently, after the earthquake of 2023, another clay tablet was discovered during restoration work in Alalak. It is 4.2 by 3.5 centimeters in size and 1.6 centimeters thick. Deciphering the inscriptions revealed that it was a shopping list, including wooden tables, chairs, and stools. The document also mentions the names of the buyer and sellers, making it an important source for understanding trade and everyday relations in the 15th century BC. According to Turkish archaeologists, this is the oldest shopping list that has survived to this day, and it is of great value for the study of the history of the ancient Near East. Mysterious accessory from the future. Archaeologists have discovered wall carvings depicting objects similar to modern handbags. Some of these images are about 12,000 years old. The earliest were found in Turkey in the ruins of the megalithic temple of Göbekli Tepe, where strange images are engraved on the columns of the ancient temple. Similar motifs have been discovered in Mexico, Iraq, and South America, raising many questions about the possible use of such objects by ancient civilizations. Although the images resemble handbags or clutches, experts believe the ancient ruins are more likely to depict baskets. Some believe that the concept of a handbag may have been invented by ancient civilizations. The first modern bag appeared in 1841 in England, created by Samuel Parkinson. The problem is that the Göbekli Tepe temple was built in 9000 BC, and its builders could hardly have known about such an accessory. Another ancient example of a handbag was found in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs written about 5,000 years ago, where the gods hold a small square object symbolizing prosperity. Archaeologists have indeed found remains of baskets and tool bags used by the ancient Egyptians, but they cannot yet say for sure what is depicted in the hieroglyphs. Similar discoveries were made in Iraq, among the ruins of an Assyrian palace built between 883 and 859 BC, which depicts a genie with wings holding what appears to be a handbag. Historian David Miano believes that these figures, called Apkallu, were minor deities who carried water buckets made from sacred date palms rather than purses. Ancient buckets similar to the engravings were actually found in Iraq. Similar motifs have also been found in Mexico among Toltec ruins, where giant statues hold objects resembling handbags. These statues were created around 750 AD. Ancient multiplication table. Archaeologists have discovered a fragment of a wooden tablet with one of the oldest multiplication tables in Japan in the ruins of the Fujiwara Palace in the Japanese prefecture of Nara. The age of the find is about 1,300 years. The ruins of the Fujiwara Palace are the remains of an ancient capital that existed until 710, when the capital moved to Nara. The tablet was found at the site of what is believed to be the Amon-fu guard post in the Fujiwara government. The size of the find is 16.2 centimeters by 1.2 centimeters. Researchers believe that it was part of a more complete multiplication table, which dates back to the late 7th or early 8th century. Even then, such tables were used in government agencies. Using infrared analysis, the following equations were deciphered from the tablet. All the inscriptions are written in kanji, Chinese characters that are also used in modern Japanese. The multiplication table begins with multiplication by 9 and contains 5 equations written horizontally in one line. If the tablet were intact, its length would be about 33 centimeters. This 5-line writing style corresponds to Chinese styles from the Qin and Han dynasties. The tablet was likely used by the Amon-fu office, which was responsible for security and administrative tasks, including counting workdays and taxes. A major discovery in Egypt. Archaeologists have discovered an ancient tomb containing 11 sealed burials near Luxor, Egypt in the South Asasif necropolis. The tomb dates back to the Middle Kingdom and likely served as a family burial chamber for several generations during the 12th and early 13th dynasties. The discovery was made possible by a joint expedition of Egyptian and American scientists. It is the first Middle Kingdom burial to be found at South Asasif, expanding our understanding of the necropolis and its connections with the Theban necropolis. Ancient floods destroyed many of the wooden coffins and linen wrappings, but jewelry survived, including amulets and necklaces made of amethyst, agate, and faience. One of the unique items was a fertility figurine made of bluish-green faience. decorated with designs and notches for attaching clay bead hair. A square sacrificial plate with images of symbolic offerings such as a bull's head, bread and meat, possibly used in rituals, was also found. The remains of 5 women, 2 men, and 3 children were laid in wooden coffins facing north to south. The women's graves had preserved their jewelry, while the children and one of the men were buried without it. Another man was found wearing a necklace of 40 faience beads and an amulet in the form of a hippopotamus's head. This find is especially important in the context of the revival of tourist interest in Egypt, where historical treasures are once again attracting attention. Rosetta Stone. One of the greatest archaeological finds that revealed to the world the key to deciphering ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs is the Rosetta Stone. It was discovered by officer Pierre-François Bouchard in July 1799 during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt. The stone immediately attracted attention due to its unique trilingual inscription. This granodiorite block contained a decree dating back to 196 BC during the reign of King Ptolemy V Epiphanes. The inscription was written in 3 languages: ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs at the top, Demotic script, a simplified script popular at the time, in the middle, and ancient Greek at the bottom. The uniqueness of the stone was that the Greek text was the key to deciphering the other 2. French scientist Jean-François Champollion completed the deciphering process in 1822, which was a revolutionary breakthrough in Egyptology. The Rosetta Stone provided insight into ancient Egyptian culture, religion, and history that had previously been hidden behind unreadable hieroglyphs. Although this is one of the most important discoveries in the history of archaeology, there are even more important archaeological discoveries to come. Wolf's Egg Iron Cube. Austria, 1885, a worker cuts a piece of brown coal and a tiny iron cube with smooth edges and grooves, as if cut with a lathe, rolls out of the black lump. Newspapers immediately dubbed the find a bolt from the Stone Age because the coal was deposited in layers that were approximately 20 million years old. The cube ended up in a museum in Salzburg, where it was discovered that it was not pure iron, but cast iron with a high content of carbon and slag, an alloy typical of 19th century blast furnaces. A tiny tail is visible on the edge, the place where liquid metal flowed out of the mold. Under a microscope, the surface is dotted with porous rust cavities like blast furnace slag. It looks like a piece of waste accidentally got into a coal trolley and sank into the seam with it. And yet, looking at the almost perfect planes of the cube, visitors speculate that the geometry is too correct for a random fragment. What if it is a part of an unknown mechanism that nature hid in the thickness of the rock? The oldest 3D map in the world. Archaeologists have discovered the oldest 3D map in the world, which is 13,000 years old. It was carved into quartz sandstone in the Ségon-Olay 3 cave shelter in France, and according to the researchers, is a schematic representation of the landscape of the Paris Basin. According to the analysis, the map shows the relief of the terrain with the designation of the directions of water flows, which was critical for the people of the late Paleolithic. According to anthropologist Anthony Milnes, for ancient people, knowledge of water flows was more important than modern concepts of distance and time. An important discovery was that Paleolithic people did not just record the landscape, but also deliberately changed it, creating artificial channels in the sandstone to manage the flow of rainwater. The creators of the map deliberately opened cracks in the stone to direct water through the settlement. This proves that already 13,000 years ago, people had an engineering mindset and a deep knowledge of hydrology. Archaeologists also suggest that the carved channels could have had mythological or ritual significance associated with water and ideas about nature and life. Where did the storm that raged for 350 years disappear to? Jupiter always seemed eternal, a gigantic gas ocean, swirling winds, and its main eye, the Great Red Spot. Larger than Earth, the storm had been rotating for hundreds of years and visible through telescopes since the days of Cassini. It was a kind of cosmic beacon, a landmark that never changed. And then it was gone. When data from James Webb and Juno converged, astronomers initially couldn't believe it. The storm's structure had truly disintegrated. What once looked like a giant scarlet cyclone now consists of pale streaks and traces of turbulence, as if someone had erased the stain from the surface of the gas giant. The causes are scientifically explained: changing winds, chaotic interactions between atmospheric currents, and the depletion of the storm's internal resources. But even scientists admit that the speed with which this centuries-old vortex disappeared defies conventional models. A storm that had lingered for centuries simply vanished in a matter of months. No astronomer expected such a pace, and while reports are citing atmospheric dynamics, people are noticing something far more simple. Something in our system is changing too quickly. Mysterious petroglyphs of Dayton Rock. On the banks of the Taunton River in Massachusetts, there is a small museum with a single but very unusual exhibit: a 40-ton rock taken out of the water and installed here in 1963. This stone, known as Dayton Rock, has long puzzled researchers with its mysterious inscriptions, the origin of which has remained a mystery for several centuries. The height of the rock is about 1.5 meters, the length is 3.5 meters, and the width is 3 meters. Its surface, covered with petroglyphs, was once inclined toward the water and probably served as a kind of message to sailors. The symbols engraved on the stone are straight lines, geometric figures, primitive images of people, and strange writing. The first written mention of the Dayton Rock dates back to 1680. English colonist John Danforth sketched the symbols, and 10 years later Reverend Cotton Mather described them in his book, calling them strange signs left by unknown ancient peoples. The rock gave rise to many hypotheses. In 1837, Danish explorer Carl Christian Raffen claimed that the inscriptions were made by Vikings and were related to the journey of Thorfinn Karlsefni, who, according to Scandinavian sagas, reached the shores of North America in the 11th century. His theory caused a stir, but in 1916, Professor Edmund Delabarre from Brown University proved that Raffen had faked the images, drawing in lines to support his hypothesis. Delabarre himself proposed a new version. He saw the name Miguel Cortereal and the date 1511 in the inscriptions. In his opinion, this message was left by a Portuguese explorer who went missing in America. In 1502, Cortereal set out to find his brother, who had been lost off the coast of Newfoundland, but he himself disappeared. He may have been forced to stay among the Indians, and 9 years later he carved a message about his fate on the rock. Delabarre's theory found support in Portugal but was received with caution in the world. Some believe that the authors of the inscriptions were the ancient Phoenicians, while others talk about the Chinese who reached America long before Columbus. Despite centuries of research, the Dayton Rock remains one of the most mysterious archaeological finds in the United States, continuing to inspire researchers to find its true history. Crystal skulls. In the antique shops of Paris at the end of the 19th century, perfectly polished skulls made of solid rock crystal appeared. Not a line about excavations, only mysterious sellers who assured that these were Mayan relics capable of singing in the moonlight and opening doors to other worlds. The legend quickly acquired details. They said that there were exactly 13 such skulls, that together they projected a map of the stars or kept a message about the disappeared heavenly mentors. Mediums assured that the crystal resonated with brainwaves, deciphering ancient wisdom, and modern master lithotherapists sold activation sessions for the price of jewelry. When the British Museum and the Smithsonian Institution scanned the most famous skulls with a scanning electron microscope in the 1990s, the surface revealed the telltale marks of a diamond-coated rotating tool that would not appear until after the 1860s. Moreover, the quartz structures lack the internal cracks that would inevitably arise from hand sanding, meaning the artifact was almost certainly carved on a modern machine. But one skull, allegedly found in Belize before the influx of mass counterfeits, still baffles experts. There are no receipts for the purchase, no archaeological protocol, only stories from previous owners. They swear that the crystal was literally polished over centuries. A drop of water, a pinch of quartz dust, and the patience of Mayan craftsmen. Scientists are almost certain that they are looking at a late copy, but still leave a small chance for the truth. What if this really is the work of ancient hands? We just haven't figured out what tool was used to create it? Piri Reis map. Created in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, This map is one of the most famous cartographic artifacts of the Age of Discovery. Although only a fragment of the map survives today, it is housed in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul and was discovered in 1929. The map is of particular interest because it contains a partial copy of a now-lost map by Christopher Columbus, making it an important historical document. The Piri Reis map depicts parts of the Atlantic Ocean, including the coasts of Europe, Africa, and South America. It is a remarkably accurate depiction of South America for the early 16th century, as well as details of the Caribbean and the islands of Hispaniola and Cuba. One of the interesting features of the map is that Cuba is depicted as part of the Asian mainland, which is likely due to early misconceptions about the geography of the New World. Another puzzling detail is the southern portion of the map, which has been interpreted as an early version of Terra Australis, a hypothetical southern continent that was believed to exist at the time. This adds further intrigue and debate about the possible sources of information used by Piri Reis when compiling the map. Perhaps he relied on older maps or used accounts from sailors of his time, making this artifact even more significant and mysterious to researchers.
Ancient Hater. In Russia, in Veliki Novgorod, archaeologists have discovered a birch bark letter in which the author advises the addressee to hang themselves. Russian scientists have studied the finds made this season in the Novgorod region. Among them, a small letter with one word stands out. A certain Prokosha laconically wrote, "Hang yourself," in a letter to Nietzsche. Apparently, even then, there were some kind of remote haters. Unfortunately, the beginning and end of this correspondence have not yet been found. Most of the found artifacts date back to the 12th century. However, not all the letters were so rude. In one of them, the scribe Roshka politely addressed Stepan with a request. Another letter mentions a water test. The accused was thrown into the water, and he was considered guilty if the water did not accept him. The mice ate an important message. Archaeologists sometimes make such amazing discoveries that they are hard to believe. One of the most unusual discoveries was an ancient Greek letter that was eaten by mice. It was written on a wooden tablet and contained an order to kill the messenger. The researchers were never able to prove whether this order was carried out. Letter written between 257 and 248 BC belonged to a man named Epharmostos. He sent it to his brother Zeno. The letter said, "Greetings. The letter you wrote to Menon about Calicon's money was eaten by mice. You will do me a favor if you write quickly so that Calicon will not be delayed. Goodbye." The ancient Greeks often wrote letters on various topics: family stories, news, love letters, political views. Letters were an important means of communication and literary expression. The first mention of writing in Greek literature appeared in Homer's Iliad, where Praetus gives a tablet to Bellerophon. In the 6th century BC, Herodotus describes the correspondence between King Amasis and the tyrant Polycrates. Letters were written with a reed pen and ink on papyrus, which was then rolled up and tied with thread. Official documents were sealed so that only the addressee could open them. In addition to papyrus, metal, wood, beeswax, clay tablets, limestone, or animal skin were used. The earliest Greek writing was written on lead tablets around 500 BC. One of the oldest books, the Crosby-Schoyen Codex, a rare manuscript that revolutionized the study of Christianity, was sold on June 11, 2024 at Christie's in London for nearly $3.9 million. Created in mid-4th century Egypt, this codex contains biblical and other early Christian texts, making it unique for the study of Christian history. The codex was found along with more than 20 other manuscripts near Dishna, Egypt in 1952. These documents are known as the Bodmer Papyri, named after the Swiss collector Martin Bodmer. The codex includes 5 early Christian texts in Coptic, including the earliest known texts of the Book of Jonah and 1 Peter. These texts are important for understanding early Christian literature and culture. The codex represents an early example of the transition from scroll to book. The codex consists of 104 pages of papyrus that were previously sewn together but are now behind protective plexiglass. This transitional period is important for the history of writing and books as it indicates the evolution of writing technologies. The codex was rewritten by the same scribe, probably an Egyptian monk, in the 3rd century AD. He used freshly cut reeds as a feather. The preservation of the codex is explained by the dry climate of Egypt, which allowed it to survive more than 1,700 years. Manuscript about the childhood of Jesus. Scientists have discovered and deciphered an ancient papyrus containing rare records of the youth of Jesus Christ.
The papyrus, which was found in the Hamburg State and University Library, went unnoticed until recently. Experts stumbled upon it by chance while analyzing manuscripts. What caught their attention was the name Jesus in the text, written in sloppy handwriting, indicating that the author may have been a student of a school or religious community in 4th or 5th century Egypt. The papyrus fragment, measuring 10 by 5 centimeters, contains 13 lines describing the story of how 5-year-old Jesus turns clay sparrows into living birds. This text is part of the Gospel of Thomas, an apocryphal scripture that tells the story of Jesus' life from age 5 to age 12. In one episode, Jesus plays by a stream and makes 12 sparrows from clay. His father, Joseph, notices this and scolds his son for working on the Sabbath, the holy day of rest. In response, Jesus commands the clay figurines to fly, and they come to life. Deciphering the text was a difficult task. Researchers, by comparing the letters with other digitized papyri, were able to gradually decipher the writing. The Gospel of Thomas was not included in the canonical Bible because it was not considered authentic. Traditional accounts of Jesus' life are limited to his birth, flight to Egypt, return to Nazareth, and visit to the Jerusalem temple. The reason for excluding the early life of Jesus from the Bible remains unclear. This find is significant for modern understanding of Christianity as it provides rare evidence of the early life of Jesus and his early followers. Family mound in Denmark. The remains of 2 of 3 people discovered in 1875 at the Borum Eshoy burial mound in Jutland, Denmark. The finds belong to the late Bronze Age. The remains were buried in oak coffins, which allowed them to be dated by annual rings, and are currently stored in the Moosgaard Museum. The barrow was over 7 meters high and almost 38 meters in diameter. At one time, it was a large monumental building with several internal stone rooms, setting stones, and a stone fence built in steps. Probably it was used for a long time for religious purposes to commemorate the buried, who were highly respected by their fellow tribesmen. There were several burials in the large barrow, including 3 oak coffins, which were probably originally buried here. In the first burial, the oak is dated to approximately 1351 BC. The remains belong to a woman 50-60 years old, a man of the same age, and a young man 20-22 years old. Perhaps they were all relatives. The body of an elderly man is well preserved, even the muscles remained. The study showed that the buried was freshly shaven and even monitored the condition of the nails. The man lay on an ox skin and was covered with a woolen blanket. The buried elderly woman was of small stature and heavy build. Analysis of the skeleton showed that she worked very hard. The young man was dressed in a woolen kilt girded with a leather belt and shod in leather boots. He still has hair, probably cut under the pot. His burial is dated by the rings of the tree from which the coffin was carved to 1345 BC. A miniature wonder. This miniature almanac with an embroidered cover, created in France around 1780, is a true masterpiece of 18th century decorative art. Its dimensions, only 3x7 centimeters, make it not only a work of art but also an intriguing collector's item. Such miniatures were popular among the French aristocracy and served both practical and aesthetic purposes. The cover, made of embroidered fabric, is decorated with an intricate pattern of flowers, which symbolized not only the taste of the era, but also the high skill of the needlewomen of that time. Red and blue decorative elements on the edges give the product additional sophistication. Such almanacs were often given as gifts, accompanied by personal inscriptions or poems, adding even more personal value to the item. Its small size suggests that it was intended to be carried in pockets or handbags, which allowed the owners to demonstrate their refined taste. It may have contained brief notes, calendars, or even love letters, making it a witness to intimate moments of life during those years. The oldest book in Europe. In January 1962, during excavations in the Derveni area near Thessaloniki, Greek archaeologists discovered an ancient papyrus in the funeral pyre of a noble Macedonian. Dating back to around 340–320 BC, it was the first scroll to be found on the Greek mainland. Because the manuscript is literary in nature, UNESCO has recognized it as the oldest book known in Europe. The discovered scroll was named the Derveni Papyrus after the place where it was found. It contains reflections on religious rites related to the fate of the soul after death, and discussions of a lost poetic text attributed to the legendary Orpheus, a singer and musician from Greek mythology. Researchers believe that the unknown author belonged to the circle of followers of the philosopher Anaxagoras and wrote for adherents of Orphism, a special religious movement, supposedly monotheistic and focused on the purification of the soul. It was the fire of the funeral pyre that preserved the papyrus fragments from the damp soil, but at the same time seriously damaged them. Scientists managed to extract about 266 charred parts and later assembled them into 26 columns of text without the lower halves of the lines. A full publication of the deciphered manuscript appeared only half a century later. A book with a surprise. A Bible with a secret compartment for a firearm is a unique combination of religious text and gunsmithing. This unusual artifact was made for the Venetian Doge Francesco Morosini in the 17th century. A secret mechanism allowed a miniature firearm to be hidden inside the book, and a silk bookmark served as a trigger. It is difficult to say whether Morosini used this Bible for its intended purpose, but he was famous for his sharp mind and caution, which may have contributed to his long life. The Doge lived to be 74 years old, which was quite a respectable age for that time. This Bible combines the engineering mastery of the era and shows how powerful people of that time sought to combine self-defense tools with everyday objects. Silver amulet. In Germany, near Frankfurt, archaeologists have discovered a unique artifact, a silver amulet known as the Frankfurt silver inscription. This is the oldest evidence of Christianity north of the Alps, dating back to around 230–270 AD. The find significantly expands our understanding of the spread of Christianity in the Roman Empire. The amulet was found during excavations of a Roman cemetery in the Heilmannstrasse area of the ancient city of Nida. Among 127 burials, the burial ground of a man aged 35–45 years was of particular interest. Along with the usual burial gifts such as pottery and an incense burner, a rolled-up silver foil was found under his chin. Analysis showed that this was a phylactery, an amulet designed to protect the wearer. The contents of the inscription applied to the silver were deciphered using computed tomography. The Latin text consists of 18 lines and contains exclusively Christian formulas. Holy, 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 and in the name of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Quotes from the Epistle of Apostle Paul to the Philippians are also included. This find proves that Christianity spread in the region several decades earlier than previously thought. Nida, as a major Roman cultural and administrative center, became the place where the new religion was able to gain a foothold in a multicultural environment. Iconic collection. Missa in Agenda Defunctorum 1733 is a rare artifact from the early 18th century created for funeral masses. Used by priests to read prayers at the altar, this unique collection stands out not only for its content, but also for the dark symbolism of its design. The book's binding is decorated with an image of a skull and crossbones, which emphasizes its purpose in rituals associated with death and remembrance. The collection includes chants and texts of the Latin liturgy, which were used to repose the souls of the dead. The symbolism of the skull on the cover reflects the then idea of the frailty of existence and a reminder of the inevitability of death, motifs characteristic of the Baroque era. Such books were works of art, symbolizing the mysticism and grandeur of Catholic rituals. It is known that bindings with such symbolism were often made specifically for churches or noble families wishing to emphasize their connection with religious tradition. This collection was probably used in a monastery or chapel, serving as a reminder of the need to pray for the repose of souls. New Mayan ruins. Archaeologists are finding more and more Mayan ruins thanks to new technologies and satellites that help to detect structures hidden under dense forests. As Texas Tech University archaeology professor Brett Houck told a NASA conference, scientists have discovered more Mayan sites in the last 10 years than in the previous 150 years. The main tool that helps in this is LiDAR, laser scanning technology. LiDAR allows you to see through dense forest vegetation and reveal structures that were previously hidden. With the help of this technology, archaeologists are finding more and more ruins in what is now Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. One such project is a study in northeastern Belize, where a team of scientists is studying an area of 650 square kilometers. In just a few days, scientists have discovered 28 new large sites. The technologies of the past used by the Maya to manage water and farm may still be useful today. Tim Murtha of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte noted that the Maya adapted to changing climate conditions by creating systems of terraces and reservoirs to combat droughts. These ancient techniques may hold important lessons for today's changing climate. The guardian with a mysterious smile. On the Greek island of Kea, on top of a hill, there has been a mysterious stone lion for over 2,600 years. His wise smile, reminiscent of both the Cheshire Cat and the Mona Lisa, is shrouded in mystery. Locals call him Levtus and believe that he once almost destroyed their island. The Lion of Kea was carved in the 6th century BC from a single stone. According to one version, its author could have been the same architect who built the Athenian Acropolis. It is surprising that the statue has survived in such good condition despite thousands of years of rain, wind, and scorching sun. But the most intriguing thing is the legend about its origin. According to legend, water nymphs lived on Kea, whose beauty aroused the envy of the gods. The angry Olympians sent the lion to destroy the island. However, Kea survived, and a temple was built in its honor, and the lion itself remained a symbol of that mythological battle. No one knows whether its smile was intentionally carved by the sculptor or whether it is a bizarre play of time and weather. But one thing is certain, the Lion of Kea still enchants tourists and remains the keeper of an ancient legend. Bases seen with the eyes. In the declassified CIA archives, there's a program with the beautiful name Stargate. Officially, it was a study of paranormal abilities. Unofficially, it was an attempt to see where neither satellites nor spies could reach. Subjects with extrasensory perception were seated in a room, given a coded target, and asked to describe what they saw. The reports contained strange coincidences. Several participants independently spoke of bases, not on Earth, but in Alaska, Africa, and Titan, a moon of Saturn. They described identical creatures with large heads and pale skin, rooms, equipment, and strange domes. For some, this is pure fantasy. For others, it's evidence of work with something that doesn't fit into conventional intelligence. It's important to understand there is no scientific confirmation of these visions. That's precisely why the program was ultimately shut down as unreliable. But the fact remains, for decades, the CIA invested money, time, and people in an attempt to reach foreign objects, not with missiles, but with consciousness. This means that the issue of UFOs and possible bases was of great concern to someone long before the current fashion. And when today these same agencies claim they have almost nothing to add to the UFO topic, it's strange to remember that they once seriously tried to look at possible alien bases with their eyes closed. Books made from people. In the 18th and 19th centuries, there was a gruesome practice of binding books in human skin. This rare and shocking phenomenon was called anthropodermic bibliophagy. Some copies of medical or philosophical treatises, as well as personal diaries, could be bound in the skin of deceased people, most often in memory of them. For example, some doctors use the skin of their patients to bind medical texts in order to immortalize their contributions to science. Books like this have become the subject of increased interest and research. Modern technology, including DNA analysis and chemical testing, can determine whether a binding is actually made from human skin. This phenomenon reflects not only the medical and scientific interests of the era, but also attitudes toward death, memory, and the body. Today, anthropodermic books are rare artifacts that evoke both horror and intrigue, as well as a reminder of the strange and controversial traditions of the past. Egyptian sarcophagus and the Simpsons. Archaeologists have discovered something unique in an Egyptian tomb, a 3,500-year-old sarcophagus depicting Marge Simpson from the popular modern animated series. The lid of the sarcophagus depicts a yellow-skinned woman wearing a green dress and a blue crown, reminiscent of Marge's famous hairstyle. But in fact, the sarcophagus belongs to the New Kingdom and depicts the goddess Nut. The tomb belonged to a 16-year-old girl whose parents probably did not have much money. However, they tried to do everything possible for a dignified burial of their daughter. As for such a coincidence, there are two options. Either the Egyptians predicted The Simpsons, or the creator of the series, Matt Groening, has secret knowledge about ancient cultures. Also, amulets, jewelry, and stone and wooden sarcophagi were found in the tomb. New Kingdom sarcophagi were often decorated with carvings and paintings depicting the dead, deities, and scenes from the Book of the Dead. What do you think? Why was the coincidence so realistic? Write your opinion in the comments.
The flesh of the fish god.
The Dogon people live in the cliffs of Bandiagara. Once every 60 years, they hold the Sigi festival. The main ritual is to bring out a huge mask of Nommo. According to legend, Nommo is an amphibious creature. It once flew in a copper egg that thundered like a thunderstorm, fell into the lake, and came out of the capsule half man, half fish. Nommo showed people star drawings. It indicated that next to the bright Sirius there is another, dark and very heavy star. Astronomers discovered this white dwarf, Sirius B, only in the 19th century, but the Dogon talked about it long before telescopes. So that his lesson would not be forgotten, Nommo, according to myth, shared flesh, gave people pieces of his skin as sacred food. That is why the Dogon still call his power Nyama Nommu, life inside the fish god. They keep clay tablets with a pair of stars in secret sanctuaries. Scientists still cannot understand whether this is ancient knowledge or a late hint from missionaries, but the Dogon themselves are sure. The copper egg really did fly in and will return one day when the time comes for the next Sigi. The history of UFOs is always a mixture of fear, technology, and myths. Let's keep this in mind and move on. Hidden medieval stories. Iceland has a rich literary history dating back to the Middle Ages. Here on an island with a population of just 380,000, many people write books following traditions that began with the Vikings. Scholars believe that the skalds, Icelandic poets, not only glorified the kings of Norway, but also laid the foundation for epic prose and vast bodies of knowledge. Medieval texts, from royal sagas to theological treatises, were written on expensive calfskin parchment, vellum. When a book aged, its materials were often reused, the text was cut out for new entries, or covers were made from the scraps, and sometimes even church mitres. In particularly rare cases, palimpsests appeared, parchments on which the old text was erased or scraped off, and new text was written in its place. This practice became especially widespread after the Reformation of the 16th century, when Latin services were replaced by Icelandic. But fragments of the old are often visible beneath the new writing, and modern methods make it possible to unravel the mysteries of a bygone era. Second Tibetan Denisovan. A team of scientists examined materials found in the Tibetan Baishaya cave and discovered an ancient rib. Paleoproteomic analysis showed that it belonged to a Denisovan who lived about 32,000 years ago. Basic information about Denisovans is known from a few finds. Most of the fossils were found in Denisova Cave, after which this species of ancient people was named. Outside this cave, Denisovans were first identified in Tibet when protein fragments from a fragment of a 160,000-year-old mandible found in 1980 were analyzed. Later, Denisovan DNA was also found in sediments from younger layers of this cave. The tooth of another representative of this paleopopulation was excavated in Laos. Scientists from Denmark, China, and France have studied the Tibetan Baishaya cave. At this high-altitude site, located at an altitude of 3,280 meters, they found many artifacts and animal remains, indicating that archaic people had visited the cave over many thousands of years. Among the more than 2,500 animal bones and teeth found in the cave were blue sheep, yaks, Tibetan gazelles, and horses. The bones of an ancient hyena, gray wolf, snow leopard, pheasant, and golden eagle were also identified. Anthropogenic traces were found on almost 20% of the bones. During excavations, archaeologists discovered a fragment of a rib more than 5 centimeters long, which fell into 2 parts. Biomolecular analysis showed that the fossil belonged to a Denisovan. Dating by cultural layer determined the age of the find at 48,000 years, indicating that the Denisovans visited the Baishaya cave for more than 100,000 years.
The Qumran Scrolls. These ancient Jewish manuscripts were discovered between 1946 and 1956 in the caves of Qumran near the Dead Sea and revolutionized our understanding of the religious and cultural life of the Second Temple period. The texts cover the period from the 3rd century BC to the 1st century AD and include some of the earliest known versions of biblical books, as well as extra-biblical and deuterocanonical texts, including liturgical, apocalyptic, and legal documents. The biblical manuscripts are especially valuable as they allow us to trace the development of the text of Scripture and provide unique comparative material for analyzing changes in religious texts of the time.
These scrolls include fragments of almost all the books of the Old Testament except for the Book of Esther, as well as texts that were previously unknown or lost. The scrolls were likely created or preserved by the Essene community living in the Qumran area. Today, most of the scrolls are kept in the Shrine of the Book at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and their study continues. Tutankhamun of Kazakhstan. In 1969, a burial site of a man in golden armor was found in Kazakhstan, which became a symbol of the country. Scientists, carried away by 4,000 artifacts, forgot about the remains themselves. The golden armor of a warrior from the 5th century BC, known as the Golden Man, became a symbol of Kazakhstan's independence. It was found in a tomb of the Saka tribe near the settlement of Issyk, 60 kilometers east of Almaty. During excavations, archaeologists discovered remains with gold-decorated armor and many other valuable artifacts. The burial, found by a farmer preparing the land for sowing, remained untouched despite the looting of the main tomb. In a sarcophagus made of spruce logs lay a skeleton decorated with 4,000 gold ornaments. This discovery amazed scientists so much that the human remains initially received less attention. The Golden Man, dubbed the Kazakhstan Tutankhamun, is thought to be an 18-year-old Saka warrior wearing a costume made up of thousands of gold ornaments, including a shirt, boots, and headdress. The costume features animal motifs and a 70 centimeter tall headdress with arrows, snow leopards, and mythical creatures. Archaeologist Janine Davis Kimball has suggested that the remains may be those of a female priestess, citing artifacts found nearby such as a mirror and necklace. In her book, Warrior Women, she theorizes that the Golden Man may have been a woman. The poor condition of the bones after 50 years of exposure to bacteria and viruses makes analysis difficult, but the possibility that the Golden Man was a woman remains open. Regardless of gender, the craftsmanship of the costume is astounding.
The largest ancient labyrinth. In India, in the Boromani steppes in the west of the country, archaeologists have stumbled upon a massive stone labyrinth, estimated to be approximately 2,000 years old. This is not just a stone pattern or a fragment of a drawing, it is a full-size structure arranged in 15 concentric circles leading to a center and is considered the largest known stone labyrinth found in India. This design is not an abstract design, but a logically thought-out structure that may have served a ritual or navigational purpose. According to one hypothesis, these labyrinths served as landmarks for ancient merchants and travelers, helping them navigate the routes connecting the shores of the western coast with the interior of the peninsula. The similarity of the patterns to examples found on ancient Roman coins suggests cultural and trade ties between India and other civilizations of the time. Remarkably, the monument was discovered by chance, not by archaeologists, but by wildlife researchers during routine fieldwork. This discovery reminds us how much remains hidden beneath the Earth's surface and how ancient people were able to use forms that seem mysterious to us today. The map that no one printed. In the archives of one of the European libraries lost among the manuscripts of the 17th century, there is a map on which Egypt looks different. It is drawn by hand, with details, rivers, ridges, temples, but some things on it do not match. In the area of the modern desert where, according to the official version, there was nothing, cities are indicated, with names, with streets. Some are in places where now there is only sand and rocky plateaus. When this map was first digitized, researchers thought that the author had simply made a mistake or made it up, but then satellite images showed that outlines similar to city forms are indeed there, under the sand. They are not visible from the ground, only from above. Who made this map? Where did he get data that even Napoleon did not have? One of the names on it coincides with the ancient Egyptian word meaning gate of return. Some are sure that this map is a copy of an even more ancient source, lost or hidden, and that means someone had information about Egypt that we will never see again. Unknown Mozart piece. A piece by the famous composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, which had been kept in the collections of Leipzig libraries for over a century, was recently discovered during work on a new edition of the Köchel Catalog. The catalog is a reference book on Mozart's work and is compiled by the International Mozarteum Foundation in Salzburg.
The discovered serenade, entitled Serenade XC, is 12 minutes long and was probably written in the mid to late 1760s when Mozart was between the ages of 10 and 13. Ulrich Lasinger, head of research at the Foundation, noted that the style of the piece indicates an early stage of the composer's work, adding that he would not have written such music at the age of 17. While it is impossible to prove the authorship 100%, Lasinger said that similarities to other works by Mozart of that time and the presence of his name on the notes point to its authenticity. The discovered composition was first presented at the International Mozarteum Foundation in Salzburg and performed at the Leipzig Opera. Surprise manuscript. Imagine, you open a medieval tome expecting dusty prayers but get a full-fledged attraction. Some pages flash with huge initials. Others are covered with Tiran signs, an ancient shorthand that only a couple dozen specialists on the entire planet can decipher today. There is a spread where the letters form figures of constellations, as if the author decided to combine a school primer with the night sky. You turn the page over, and in the corner you see a tiny scribble. The scribe checked his pen, quickly composing a mini potpourri of poems about birds. Half of the space is taken up by wide margins. Why waste expensive parchment? It turns out that the emptiness here is not emptiness. It was on these margins that medieval students filled in marginalia, and later the same margins saved books from mold. The humid air began to spoil the edges of the book, and the text remained on the side. There is also a completely unexpected format, a bat book. Such an almanac was worn hanging upside down from the belt, laid out at full height, and immediately received a calendar, tables of lunar phases, and a list of saints for the entire year. Purple spots in the corners? These are mold scars. The manuscript was once stored in dampness, and microbes managed to bite off the pages. Now scientists literally count the fungal growth rings like on an old tree. Just imagine how much information is hidden in these cosmetic defects. They are used to date library moves and even change the idea of the climate of that era. It is these visual Easter eggs that make the manuscript not just a collection of text, but a full-fledged quest. Each mark, each unexpected tab is a direct portal to the people who wrote, read, and used this book centuries before us. Slab with Mayan glyphs. Archaeologists from the National Institute of Anthropology and History have discovered a huge stone panel carved into the bottom of a sacred pool in Coba, on the Yucatan Peninsula in the Mexican state of Quintana Roo. Coba, an ancient Mayan city, flourished between 500 and 900 AD and reached a population of about 50,000 people. Recent excavations have revealed a monumental panel with 123 Mayan glyphs carved into the bottom of a sacred pool near the 42-meter-high Nohok Mul Pyramid. The glyphs form an L-shaped figure over an area of over 11 square meters. Epigraphic studies have revealed the name of the previously unknown ruler of Coba, Kawil Chakchin, who adopted the name of the lightning god Kowil. The glyphs also mention the founding of the city of Kewitznal in 569 CE and dynastic rulers such as Bolon Sakabahau. Archaeologists are currently working to preserve the eroded site and create a 3D reconstruction for future research. List of Roman centurions. Polish archaeologists have discovered unique papyri with lists of Roman centurions who served in Egypt in the ancient port of Berenice. These rare documents were found along with Italian pottery, Roman coins, and a special buckle in the ruined office of a centurion. Berenice, located on the Red Sea, was built by Emperor Tiberius after the annexation of Egypt by Rome. The discovered papyri contain letters from centurions with the names Caeosus, Licinius, and Petronius. In one of the letters, Petronius asks Licinius about the prices of exclusive goods and instructs them to be sent with legionaries on camels. These letters provide unique insight into the trade and daily life of the Roman military. Artifacts found alongside the papyri include Roman coins, brooches, and pottery from Italy, the Mediterranean, Africa, and India, demonstrating Berenice's importance as a trading port. The papyri were found on the western outskirts of Berenice in a unique zoological cemetery where numerous islands were also found, fragments of texts on ceramics. These finds shed light on the presence of Roman legionaries in Egypt and the importance of Berenice in the ancient Roman trade network. Myths. If the Nazis were truly inventive in anything, it was in the way they rewrote myths. Almost any ancient culture that could be found to have an echo of power, ritual, sacrifice was turned into another Aryan source. And it doesn't matter how historically justified it was. The main thing was that it sounded impressive. With the Vikings, everything was simple. They were taken as an example of the pure masculine principle. Runes, swords, images of dark heroism. It was from this logic that Himmler tried to create from the SS not an army, but a cult, with its own symbols, rituals, even places of power. The same Wewelsburg Castle was supposed to become something like a new Valhalla, a temple for the future caste of warrior priests. With the Aztecs, everything is more complicated. The geography is too distant. But the Nazis were interested in the practice of sacrifice. They were attracted by the idea itself. Ritual death as an act of power, submission. The Ahnenerbe records mention parallels between Germanic myths and Mesoamerican mythology. Perhaps they were not looking for connections, but for justifications. They needed to prove that human life is a resource, that sacrifice can be sacred, and controllable, and Atlantis. There were no boundaries at all. There were many theories, but one of them was adopted. Supposedly, the Atlanteans were the original Aryans, a tall, white race with technology and knowledge destroyed by a catastrophe. And the mission of the Reich was to return what was lost, to rethink the fall, to build a new order from the old ruins. The Nazis did not simply believe in these stories, they made a structure out of them, an architecture of meaning to which they adjusted their power. And that is why all this is still frightening. For them, myths were not a fairy tale, but a blueprint. Trilingual cuneiform. Here is the inscription of Xerxes I, one of the great Persian kings who reigned in the 5th century BC. The inscription is carved into a smooth section of rock 20 meters above the ground, making it difficult to access and giving it a special grandeur. It is located near Lake Van in modern-day Turkey and is part of the ancient fortress of Van. The inscription is unique in that it is written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Akkadian, which was typical for Persian kings who sought to demonstrate their power over many nations. Xerxes I, famous for his campaigns against the Greeks and mentioned in Greek history, used such inscriptions to assert his power and grandeur. Each symbol here was carved with great precision, and cuneiform was used to convey an official message. The height and complexity of the inscription also indicates the power of the Persian king and was made to be visible to everyone who passed by. Canadian runes. Northern Ontario rarely spoils us with big archaeological news, but the hurricane of 2018 brought a sensation. When the wind tore out a century-old pine tree near the town of Wawa, a granite slab with an area of almost 2 by 1.5 meters was found under its roots. The surface was polished by a glacier, and a neat frame was cut along the edges. Inside are 255 runes of the Elder Futhark, the full text of the Our Father. Not a single mistake, the same depth of cut as if the master wrote in a familiar alphabet. On the right is engraved a boat with 16 figures inside. Just below, 14 crosses, X, of unknown meaning. Radiocarbon does not help here, but geochemists have determined that the thinnest crust of oxides at the bottom of the cut was formed for about 200 years. This means that the monument dates back to the early 19th century, the era when Swedish and Norwegian settlers developed the area. Vikings. Number. The style of the runes is late, closer to the ethnographic monuments of Scandinavia, and the Christian prayer hints at a missionary context. Why the slab ended up in the middle of nowhere and face down is the main question. One version, a forest church of a temporary lumberjack camp where the stone served as an altar. Another is a memorial to the perished crew. 16 people in the boat and 14 crosses nearby could be account of the living and the dead after the crash on the Great Lakes. Whatever is hidden behind the mystery, the inscription became the longest runic prayer found in North America. Thou shalt not steal, but they did. In the quiet English village of Little Steeping, someone broke into a church at night. They took away several ancient Victorian frescoes, and among them was the most ironic of all, a table with the 10 Commandments. Among them, of course, was the inscription, Thou shalt not steal. The church warden, 80-year-old Basil Harwood, just threw up his hands. Probably the thieves wanted to study the commandments better, but apparently they did not read them all. They took not only the frescoes, but also an old painting of Moses, and even an ordinary extension cord. Perhaps it just happened to be at hand, or maybe it was a sacred object. The police, of course, began an investigation, but the story itself is almost a joke, when reality makes a plot better than any script. The US and Russia have suddenly remembered nuclear testing. In recent years, the world convinced itself that the era of nuclear testing was over, but the situation has changed dramatically. The US officially announced its readiness to conduct a rapid subcritical experiment in Nevada, and Russia, almost simultaneously, announced that it could resume testing on Novaya Zemlya, the first time in decades. Officially, this involves research into the safety of warheads and modernization of the arsenal. However, experts have noted that the preparations are proceeding unusually quickly and are being carefully concealed under technical reports. Something else has also emerged. Satellite images have revealed activity in areas usually left untouched without serious reason. The US has cleared several underground tunnels, while Russia has begun upgrading old observation posts where they previously monitored air shock waves. There are no direct explanations for this, no conflict, no arms race on a level that would require actual testing. A theory has emerged that governments are preparing systems capable of operating in space, from intercepting objects to testing the resilience of satellites to extreme electromagnetic emissions. Although officially described as technical measures, the coincidence of activity by two nuclear powers has led many to wonder if the cause may be external, not political. Military officials tend to be vague, but even they rarely synchronize such programs without a serious reason. To the average person, this all seems alarming. Two major countries suddenly acting as if something is happening beyond the atmosphere that should be checked in advance. There is no official explanation, but the fact that nuclear test sites that have been dormant for decades are once again coming to life raises questions in itself. The further we watch, the fewer coincidences there are. Perhaps the answers were there all along. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Bye everyone.